Hello, this is Morel Benard with Lady Chatterley's Lover, the continuation story of Lady Chatterley's Lover. So, the last words were in respect of a letter from the nurse, Mrs Bolton, and she said that these commons, violent women always go partly insane when the change of life comes upon them. This was a nasty blow to Connie. Here she was, sure as life, coming in for a share of the lowness and dirt. She felt angry with him for not having got clear of Roberta Coutts, nay, for ever having married her. Perhaps he had a certain hankering after lowness. Connie remembered the last night she had spent with him and shivered. He had known all that sensuality, even with Roberta Coutts. It was really rather disgusting. It would be well to be rid of him, clear of him altogether. He was, perhaps, really common, really low. She had a revulsion against the whole affair, and almost envied the Guttridge girls, their wonky inexperience and crude maidenliness. And she now dreaded the thought that anybody would know about herself and the keeper. How unspeakably humiliating. She was weary, afraid, and felt a craving for utter respectability, even for the vulgar and deadening respectability of the Guttridge girls. If Clifford knew about her affair, how unspeakably humiliating. She was afraid, terrified of society and its unclean bite. She almost wished she could get rid of the child again and be quite clear. In short, she fell into a state of funk. As for the scent bottle, that was her own folly. She had not been able to refrain from perfuming his 1 or 2 handkerchiefs with his shirts in the drawer, just out of childishness. And she had left the little bottle of Cottage Woods violet perfume half empty among his things. She wanted him to remember her and the perfume. As for the cigarette ends, they were Hilda's. She could not help confiding a little in Duncan Forbes. She didn't say she had been the keeper's lover. She only said she liked him and told Forbes the history of the man. "Oh," said Forbes, "you'll see. They'll never rest till they pull the man down and done him. If he has refused to creep up into the middle classes when he had a chance, and if he's a man who stands up for his own sex, then they'll do him in. It's the one thing they won't let you be, straight and open in your sex. You can be as dirty as you like. In fact, the more dirt you do on sex, the better they like it. But if you believe in your own sex and won't have it done dirt, they'll down you. It's the one insane taboo left, sex as a natural and vital thing. They won't have it, and they'll kill you before they'll let you have it. You'll see, they'll hound that man down. And what's he done after all? If he's made love to his wife or ends on, hasn't he a right to? She ought to be proud of it. But you see, even a low bitch like that turns on him and uses the hyena instinct of the mob against sex to pull him down. You have a snivel and feel sinful or awful about your sex before you're allowed to have any. Oh, they'll hound the poor devil down. Connie had a revulsion in the opposite direction now. What had he done after all? What had he done to herself, Connie, but give her an exquisite pleasure and a sense of freedom and life? He had released her warm, natural sexual flow, and for that they would hound him down? No, it should not be. She saw the image of him, naked white, and tanned face and hands looking down and addressing his erect penis as if it were another being, the odd grin flickering on his face. And she heard his voice again. That's got the nicest woman's ass of anybody. And she felt his hand warmly and softly closing over her tail again, over her secret places like a benediction. And the warmth ran through her womb, and the little flames flickered in her knees, and she said, "Oh no, I mustn't go back on it. I must not go back on him. I must stick to him and to what I had of him through everything. I had no warm, flaming life till he gave it to me, and I won't go back on it." She did a rash thing. She sent a letter to Ivy Bolton, enclosing a note to the keeper, and asking Mrs Bolton to give it him. And she wrote to him, "I am very much distressed to hear of all the trouble your wife is making for you, but don't mind it. It is only a sort of hysteria. It will all blow over as suddenly as it came. But I'm awfully sorry about it, and I do hope you are not minding very much. After all, it isn't worth it. She's only a hysterical woman who wants to hurt you. I shall be home in 10 days' time, and I do hope everything will be all right." A few days later came a letter from Clifford. He was evidently upset. "I'm delighted to hear you are prepared to leave Venice on the 16th. But if you are enjoying it, don't hurry home. We miss you. Wraby misses you. But it is essential that you should get your full amount of sunshine and pyjamas, as the advertisements of the Lido say. So please do stay on a little longer. If it is cheering you up and preparing you for our sufficiently awful winter, even today it rains. I am assiduously, admirably looked after by Mrs Bolton. She's a queer specimen. The more I live, the more I realise what strange creatures human beings are. Some of them might just as well have 100 legs like a centipede or 6 like a lobster. The human consistency and dignity one has been led to expect from one's fellow men seem actually non-existent. One doubts if they exist to any startling degree, even as oneself. The scandal of the keeper continues and gets bigger like a snowball. Mrs Bolton keeps me informed. She reminds me of a fish which, though dumb, seems to be breathing silent gossip through its gills, while ever it lives. All goes through the sieve of her gills, and nothing surprises her. It is as if the events of other people's lives were the necessary oxygen of her own. She is preoccupied with Mellors' scandal, and if I will let her begin, she takes me down to the depths. Her great indignation, which even then is like the indignation of an actress playing a role, is against the wife of Mellors, whom she persists in calling Bertha Courts. I have been to the depths of the muddy lies of the Bertha Coutses of this world, and when released from the current of gossip, I slowly rise to the surface again. I look at the daylight, its wonders, that it ever should be. It seems to me absolutely true that our world, which appears to us the surface of all things, is really the bottom of a deep ocean. All our trees are submarine growths, and we are weird, scaly clad submarine fauna, feeding ourselves on offal like shrimps. Only occasionally the soul rises, gasping through the fathomless fathoms under which we live, far up to the surface of the ether, where there is true air. I am convinced that the air we normally breathe is a kind of water, and men and women are a species of fish. But sometimes the soul does come up, shoots like a kittiwake into the light, with ecstasy, after having preyed on the submarine depths. It is our mortal destiny, I suppose, to prey upon the ghastly, sebaceous life of our fellow men in the submarine jungle of mankind. But our immortal destiny is to escape, once we have swallowed our swimmy catch, up again into the bright ether, bursting out from the surface of old ocean into real light. Then one realizes one's eternal nature. When I hear Mrs. Bolton talk, I feel myself plunging down to the depths, where the fish of human secrets wriggle and swim. Carnal appetite makes one seize a beakful of prey, then up again, out of the dense into the ethereal, from the wet into the dry. To you I can tell the whole process. But with Mrs. Bolton, I only feel the downward plunge, down, horribly, among the seaweeds and the pallid monsters of the very bottom. I'm afraid we are going to lose our gamekeeper. The scandal of the truant wife, instead of dying down, has reverberated to greater and greater dimensions. He is accused of all unspeakable things, and curiously enough, the woman has managed to get the bulk of the colliers' wives behind her. Gruesome fish, and the village is reticent with talk. I hear this Bertacoots besieges Mellors in his mother's house, having ransacked the cottage and the hut. She seized one day upon her own daughter as that chip of the female block was returning from school. But the little one, instead of kissing the loving mother's hand, bit it firmly, and so received from the other hand a smack in the face which sent her reeling into the gutter, whence she was rescued by an indignant and harassed grandmother. The woman has blown off an amazing quantity of poison gas. She has aired in detail all those incidents of her conjugal life which are usually buried down in the deepest grave of matrimonial silence between married couples. Having chosen to exhume them after 10 years of burial, she has a weird array. I hear these details from Linley and the doctor, the latter being amused. Of course, there is really nothing in it. Humanity has always had a strange avidity for unusual sexual postures, and if a man likes to use his wife, as Benedetto Cellini says, in the Italian way, well, that is a matter of taste. But I had hardly expected our gamekeeper to be up to so many tricks. No doubt Bertha Coots herself first put him up to them. In any case, it is a matter of their own personal squalor, and nothing to do with anybody else. However, everybody listens as I do myself. A dozen years ago, common decency would have hushed the thing. But common decency no longer exists, and the colliers' wives are all up in arms and unabashed in voice. One would think every child in Terrashore for the last 50 years had been an immaculate conception, and every one of our non-conformist females was a shining Joan of Arc. that our estimable gamekeeper should have about him a touch of rebellion seems to make him more monstrous and shocking than a murderer like Crippen. Yet these people in Tevershaw are a loose lot, if one is to believe all accounts. The trouble is, however, the execrable Bertha Coots has not confined herself to her own experiences and sufferings. She has discovered, at the top of her voice, that her husband has been keeping women down at the cottage and has made a few random shots at naming the women. This has brought a few decent names trailing through the mud, and the thing has gone quite considerably too far. An injunction has been taken out against the woman. I've had to interview Mellors about the business, as it was impossible to keep the woman away from the wood. He goes about as usual with his Miller of the D-Air. I care for nobody, or not I, if nobody care for me. Nevertheless, I shrewdly suspect he feels like a dog with a tin can tied to its tail, though he makes a very good show pretending the tin can isn't there. But I heard that in the village the women call away their children if he's passing, as if he were the Marquise de Sade in person. He goes on with a certain impudence, but I'm afraid the tin can is firmly tied to his tail, and that inwardly he repeats, like Don Rodrigo in the Spanish ballad, "Ah, now it bites me where I most have sinned." I asked him if he thought he would be able to attend to his duty in the wood, and he said he did not think he had neglected it. I told him it was a nuisance to have the woman trespassing, to which he replied that he had no power to arrest her. Then I hinted at the scandal and its unpleasant course. "Aye," he said, "folks should do their own fucking, then they wouldn't want to listen to a lot of clapfarts about another man's." He said it with some bitterness, and no doubt it contains the real germ of truth. The mode of putting it, however, is neither delicate nor respectful. I hinted as much, and then I heard the tin can rattle again. It's not for a man the shape you're in, Sir Clifford, to twit me for having a cod between my legs. These things, said indiscriminately to all and sundry, of course, do not help him at all, and the rector and Finlay and Borrows all think it would be well if the man left the place. I asked him if it was true that he entertained ladies down at the cottage, and all he said was, "Why, what's that to do you, Sir Clifford?" I told him I intended to have decency observed on my estate, to which he replied, "Then you mun button the mouths of the women." When I pressed him about his manner of life at the cottage, he said, "Surely you might made a scandal out of me and the bitch Flossie. You've missed summat there." As a matter of fact, for an example of impertinence, he'd be hard to beat. I asked him if it would be easy for him to find another job. He said, "If you're hinting that you'd like to shut me out of this job, it'd be easy as a wink." So we made no trouble at all about leaving at the end of next week, and apparently is willing to initiate a young fella, Joe Chambers, into as many mysteries of the craft as possible. I told him I would give him a month's wages extra when he left. He said he'd rather I kept my money, as I'd no occasion to ease my conscience. And I asked him what he meant, and he said, "You don't owe me nothing extra, Sir Clifford, so don't pay me nothing extra. If you think you see my shirt hanging out, just tell me." Well, there's the end of it for the time being. The woman has gone away. We don't know where to, but she's liable to arrest if she shows her face in Tevershaw. And I heard she is mortally afraid of jail because she merits it so well. Mellors will depart on Saturday evening, and the week will soon become normal again. Oh, listen to the next episode, the next video of Lady Chatterley's Lover. Join me for the next video of Lady Chatterley's Lover with me, Morel Benard. Join me for the next video. And please subscribe and share. Okay.